Here's something that doesn't make sense at first. How can the Inquisitor's mace underperform the Glacial Timotli at a boss that is weak to crush? The Inquisitor's mace costs 300 million GP on the Grand Exchange and is a super rare drop from the Nightmare, while the Glacial Timotli costs 70k GP and is just a drop from regular Frost Naguas or the Amoxliatl, an early game boss. A 70k weapon beating a 300 million weapon at a crush weak boss. This is what we will find the answers to in this video. In the previous episode, link in the description if you missed it, we covered why defense is so important at the Moons of Peril, not only for surviving, but for speeding up kills as well. This video is the other side of the coin. Once you're not dying, what should you be actually hitting with? The answer comes down to one mechanic that the Moons of Perils use that was introduced with them, and not many other monsters adopted since, even though it's a goldmine of design space. This mechanic is the flat armor. Let's get into it. So what exactly is flat armor? The simplest way to think about it is this. It's a number that gets subtracted from every single melee or ranged hitsplat you deal after the damage is already rolled. So if you would deal 20 damage and the boss has a flat armor of 6, you will end up dealing 14 damage. If you would deal 10 damage, you will deal 4. If you would deal 3 damage, you will hit 0, as you cannot hit any lower. That's it. That's the whole mechanic on paper. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe. Obviously there's more and it gets interesting. It's very different from normal defense. Regular defense stats of the bosses affect your chance of hitting at all. Flat armor does not care about whether you hit or miss. It taxes every hit splat by a flat amount, and that's new. RuneScape has gone over 2 decades with just one defense calculation. Now flat armor adds another system on top of it. But let me throw another curveball. Here's the flat armor calculation we discussed, a simple subtraction. But what if we use basic algebra and do this? Whoa, mind blown. Yes, there is negative flat armor. And yes, it adds a flat amount of damage on top of the final roll. Modifying every single hit splat by a flat amount has a very big implication on your choice of weapons, how it deals damage, and how fast it is. If we think about it a little bit, there's a very obvious formula that appears. The two main variables are the number of hit splats a weapon produces per attack and the attack speed of the weapon. In case of a positive flat armor value, meaning attacks get reduced, a slower single splat weapon proves to be better because that damage penalty is applied less often and only a single time. The inverse is true for negative flat armor. The faster the weapon and the more hit splats it produces per attack, the more frequently the negative flat armor bonus is cashed in. That's the core of it. Flat armor punishes fast multi-hitters when positive and rewards them when it's negative. And conveniently, the 3 moons each sit at a different point on that spectrum, which is what we're going to dig into next. Oh, and one more fun fact, which you might have caught in the initial explanation of the mechanic. I started off by saying that flat armor is a number that gets subtracted from every single melee or ranged hit splat you deal. Yes, magic attacks ignore flat armor, both the negative and the positive. Maging Moons is a meme anyway, so it doesn't really apply unless there are some leak shenanigans, but it is useful to keep in mind when fighting other enemies with a flat armor mechanic. Alright, so now that we know what flat armor actually does, let's walk through each moon and see how it plays out in practice. This is where it gets interesting, because each boss tells a completely different story. Eclipse is usually the first moon of peril people fight. The caverns flow most naturally this way. She is weak to stab attacks and has the most flat armor out of all the bosses, which might make you feel you barely hit anything, especially with her glancing blows mechanic. She has 6 flat armor, meaning every single hit splat you deal gets reduced by 6. This drops to 4 during her clone phase, making it a bit more forgiving. In exchange, you need to react to her attacks fast. The clone phase is the only special moon mechanic where flat armor matters. This is arguably the most fun phase of the whole 3-boss encounter and one of the most fun mechanics in the entire game, in my opinion. She will appear somewhere in a circle around you 15 times in bursts of 3, and you have to face her to counter her attacks. Your attack speed does not matter here, and you will always hit upon successfully parrying her hit, which means you are encouraged to bring high-hitting weapons, which tend to be slower by default. Let's see some candidates that the mid-level players can use during the clone phase. Since only the strength bonus matters, you shouldn't care about either the accuracy bonuses or the attack speed. I picked 4 big weapons a mid-game player might have access to at the point in their account when moons are relevant. A. Dark's Great Axe, B. Colossal Blade, C. Crystal Halberd, and D. the Zombie Axe. So how do they each fare? In theory, the strongest weapon here is Dark's Axe, but only if the full Dark set is worn and if your current HP is below 75%-ish. The lower you go, the stronger it becomes, of course, but the more dangerous a single mistake can become. If you don't want to bother with managing the Dark side effect, or you just don't have it, your best bet is grinding out a Colossal Blade from the Giant's Foundry. The weapon is very slow, but has a special effect, which makes it especially great against the Eclipse Moon. Your max hit is increased by twice the size of the enemy you're swinging it against. Size, in this context, means the number of tiles on one side of the square the enemy occupies, maxing out at 5. Since the Eclipse Moon occupies a 5x5 square, the Colossal Blade's max hit is increased by 10. The Crystal Halberd is another great item to bring here if you don't want to grind Giant's Foundry. However, there's nothing special to mention here. It's just a slow weapon with a high strength bonus, which is perfect for this mechanic. And the good old Zombie Axe is an honorable mention here, as this is the only weapon on this list that can be used as an actual main weapon, making it unnecessary to bring a switch for this single phase. However, it is way worse than the Colossal Blade, so if you plan to stay here for a while, it might be worth grinding it out. The takeaway for Eclipse, slow, hard-hitting, single Hitsplat, she rewards weapons that put everything into one row. The next boss on the chopping block, the Blue Moon. The Blue Moon is weak to crush attacks, and she has -5 flat armor, adding 5 to every hit splat you deal. That is a significant number. This completely reshapes the weapon tier list for this boss. Do you remember the question we asked at the beginning of the video? Blue Moon is weak to crush. How can the Inquisitor's mace underperform the Glacial Timothli? Well, by now you know the answer. While the Inquisitor's mace is a fortic weapon and has 95 crush bonus and 89 strength bonus, and the Glacial Timothli has 72 crush bonus and only 64 strength bonus, it hits twice, and the sheer power of the negative flat armor really shows here. Now, you might be sitting there, slightly skeptical, and say, well, alright, but the Inquisitor's mace was made to work alongside the Inquisitor's armor set. Surely, in full Inquisitors, the mace outperforms the 70k weapon. And to that I say, you're right, keeping everything else at the mid-game gear level, but replacing all pieces with the Inquisitors in both setups, the Inquisitor's mace outperforms the Glacial Timothli by 0.06%. That is 0.01 damage per second. You paid 225 million GP for the armor and 300 million for the mace for 0.01 DPS over a 70k weapon. What a deal. The why is obvious. -5 flat armor is a massive bonus for multiple hit fast weapons. The dual Maquahuitl and the Glacial Timothli are both great options for the Blue Moon. The takeaway for Blue Moon, fast multi-hit weapons are massively rewarded here, and the slow weapons don't utilize the flat armor sufficiently. And here's kind of the middle ground, the Blood Moon. She's weak to slash attacks and still has some negative flat armor you can abuse, but not nearly as significant as the Blue Moons. It's -2. Smaller, but it adds up. While the other two bosses can be whittle down. Utilizing your edge against her flat armor in any way you can is crucial here. The Blood Moon heals whenever it or its mechanics damage the player, which means she can suck back health surprisingly fast if you're not keeping pace with your DPS. You could use a Dragon Scimitar or a Zombie Axe, but picking up the Sulfur Blades, which is a slash weapon that hits twice from this very cavern, can give you that extra 5% or so DPS you might need until you can get a whip. Above whip, however, stemming from the fact that the current melee meta of Old School Runescape is basically built around slash weapons, the weapon progression follows a mostly standard path. Abyssal Whip, Abyssal Tentacle, Blade of Saldor, Noxious Halberd, Soul Reaper Axe, Scythe. Either way, the takeaway for Blood Moon, faster slash weapons are better, but since that is already the meta in other parts of the game, you can almost always just bring your best general melee weapon here. Across the three bosses, the flat armor values go +6, -5, -2. Weak to stab, weak to crush, weak to slash. This is deliberate. It's designed to make you think about your weapon between each fight and theorycraft before the fight. Not just walk through all three with the same weapon, at mid-game anyway. If you have a scythe, go ahead. But the thing about flat armor is that it didn't have to stay confined to the 3 Moons of Peril. Along the moons, it was added to the Sulfur Naguas in the dungeon itself with -4 flat armor. It also spread to other Naguas in the future updates of Farlamore. Amoxliatl has -2 flat armor and she's weak to crush, so the Glacial Tomatli she drops is perfect here. Regular Frost Naguas in the same ruins share that -4 flat armor, like the Sulfur Naguas. Earthen Naguas from the Final Dawn quest also have -4 flat armor. So Moons and the Naguas in general were the forefathers or mothers of flat armor, but Jagex was happy to add it outside of Farlamore as well. I will list some notable enemies that have a flat armor, either positive or negative, that an average player might encounter regularly. Armored zombies from the Defender of Barak and Curse of Araf quests have 1 or 2 flat armor depending on location. Dusk from Grotesque Guardians has -1 flat armor in his first form. On a similar note, Gargoyles have -2 flat armor as well, added with Project Rebellions in 2025. Carol from Barrows got -2 flat armor to shake up weapon choices as well. Worms got 2 flat armor with Project Rebalance, and flat armor has also crept into Sailing, with Veiled Krakens getting the highest in the game, 15 flat armor. There are lots of other enemies in the game that are more niche and players may not encounter every day. Feel free to take a look at the wiki to see them all. So across all these enemies, you're looking at a mechanic that started as a mid-level boss quirk and has since become another knob Jagex can turn to affect NPC design. From here, the design space opens up in some exciting directions. The most obvious one is new bosses, maybe a multi-boss encounter where one has a huge negative flat armor while the other has a huge positive one, or even a boss that changes flat armor mid-fight depending on health percent or certain criteria. Imagine a dynamic flat armor that changes randomly and you have to adapt mid-fight every so often. The most creative direction, though, would be bringing flat armor to gear you equip. Right now, it only exists on NPCs. Players have never had access to it in either direction. But there's no reason it has to stay that way. A piece of armor that gives you even a single flat armor would shake up the tank meta for sure. On the other hand, Old School Runescape is already struggling with power creep, so to combat this, we could introduce some negative flat armor or new gear pieces to counter the power creep generated by better offensive stats in the future. At the same time, special attack weapons that apply negative flat armor to an enemy could create some very interesting mechanics as well. This is a very fun topic to explore in my opinion, and I'm sure I haven't gone deep enough and many of you have some great ideas, so please share them in the comments. Right now, the mechanic is contained with NPCs and not many of them at that. But the foundation is solid and the player base understands it. If Jagex continues building on it, which is what they seem to be doing, flat armor has every reason to grow. one mechanic that affects every Hitsplat individually, 3 bosses that each sit at a completely different point on the spectrum, and a design space that, if Jagex keeps building on, could eventually reshape how we think about gearing for new content entirely. That's what makes it interesting. It's not a complicated mechanic, it's a simple subtraction, but the effects on weapon choice, boss design, these implications run pretty deep for something some players aren't even aware of. If you haven't watched the first video yet, it covers why defensive gear outperforms offensive gear for kill times at the Moons of Peril. Together, they give you the full picture of why the Moons of Peril fight itself is so unique. In the last episode of the Moons trilogy, we will cover the area around the moons, why the caverns of Neibatli are so interesting, and how the flow of the bosses, one after another, is great design. If you like my content, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you at the streams of the cavern. Thank you for watching.